I encourage you, show up, get in the game, start doing deals. It doesn't have to be grand slams. It doesn't have to be home runs. It doesn't have to be 19 units in a year. Just go buy one. Hello, we have a huge announcement here at Rich Dad as we are expanding the Rich Dad radio show to bring you financial education multiple days per week. My name is Jaren Sustar, and I have the pleasure to be hosting the Rich Dad Real Estate Show, where we'll talk about the good news and the bad news about real estate. Each week, I'm going to share how you can become financially free through investing in real estate. I'm going to give you market insights, and I'm going to give you real-life examples of my own failures and success. So I saw it fitting that for this first episode, I share my story, how I got started in real estate, and my hope is that my journey is going to inspire all of you who tune into this episode to go and do the same thing. But when I tell my personal story, the goal for me is to make it feel as though anybody can do it, because I truly believe that since I did it, anybody can do it. I am just a normal, everyday, average dude, pastor's son from Anderson, South Carolina. So I had to mix in the pastor's son, mom and dad. I love you. They'll probably listen to this episode at some point. But pastors, unless you have this huge megachurch, don't necessarily make a ton of money. And so growing up in a pastor's home, we didn't make a ton of money. And so nobody was going out buying real estate. Nobody was necessarily talking about investing all the time. That wasn't huge on our plate just because we had other focuses and because we didn't have a lot of money. And so I don't come from money. I've never been given a dime. People have helped me along the way. They've given me knowledge and they've given me loans. But as far as gifts to go do things and just give me a big inheritance has not been the case. I am the classic American story, the American dream story that you can come from not much, small town USA or big town USA, doesn't matter where you're from, and make something of your life should you want to, and especially do it through the greatest asset in the world, which is real estate. So for me growing up, I had a great upbringing with my parents, great family. My desire in life was to play Division I college baseball. That's all I wanted to do, was play baseball. Every day I was up early at 5 a.m. working out. I'd go to school. After school, go to practice, hitting the cages, whatever the case would be. It's just baseball, 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 baseball for me. And so I spent all of my teen years playing a lot of ball, practicing a lot of ball, and I got to fulfill my dream of playing Division I baseball at Charleston Southern University, 2009 through 2013. And it was the greatest time of my life. The problem is, when it comes to financials, though, is in the baseball world, especially at the mid-major level, which I was playing, scholarships aren't plentiful. So Charleston Southern, if I remember correctly, had 9 scholarships to field a roster of 40 guys. So we got to put 40 guys out there, and we only get 9 full scholarships to do that. There's a big discrepancy. So what that means is 99% of the time, you're not getting a full ride. Only if you came across an absolute stud and you could convince that guy to come to your mid-major school instead of going to the big school where they get a full ride. And even then, probably not the best use of your scholarship. But anyways, point being, I didn't get a ton of money for playing baseball. I think I started with around a 35% scholarship. And then by the time I graduated, I had a 45% scholarship. So it was nice, but I was at a private school that cost $30,000 plus a year to go there. And of course I went in with some sort of academic help, but didn't keep my grades up, because who does that their first couple semesters of college? At least not me. I got there and had all the freedom and all the baseball that was going on, and racked up a bunch in student loans. And so by the time I graduate in 2013, after being in school for 4 years, having a little bit of athletic scholarship, really nothing else coming in, I owed over $65,000 in student loans. Now, I wouldn't change a thing. I had a blast. I wish maybe I would have done a little better in school to keep the scholarships, but outside of that, I would have done it all over again. But I started behind the 8 ball immediately after college with $65,000 in student loans. And then my wife and I decide that we're going to get married, or my girlfriend at the time, and so I have to go buy a $2,500 engagement ring. And then, of course, I'm from the middle of nowhere, South Carolina, and so you have to have a jacked up truck. And so I graduated college, started working, and I'm by a truck that cost $25,000. And then I ran up about $15,000 in credit card debt, all after graduating school. And while making $45,000 a year, driving a delivery truck for a uniform company, delivering clean uniforms and picking up dirty uniforms. And so here I am in what a ton of Americans experience every year, behind the eight ball. I looked up some statistics before this show, and today in the U.S., there is $1.74 trillion in student loan debt. $1.74 trillion. There is the average wedding costs $29,000, which is just absolutely insanity. Truck debt or car debt in America is $1.6 trillion. And credit card debt is $1.142 trillion in the United States. And so for all the people who start life behind the eight ball financially, you kind of feel like you're on an island and you're stuck and you're always going to be there. And a lot of people, unfortunately, believe that narrative, and they end up stuck behind the eight ball for their entire life. They become victims. But there are tons, hundreds of thousands, not millions of people who are in the same boat as you. And I think that is very important to comprehend, because it's hard to do things when we feel alone. But when we understand, okay, I'm not the only person that's been here. There's a lot of people who've been here before me, and there's a lot of people who are dealing with this right now. And if you understand that, then you can realize that, hey, I don't have to be stuck in this place forever. And I remember reaching that crossroads where I said, okay, am I going to be status quo for the rest of my life? Am I going to do what most people in the area that I'm from do? They live the middle class lifestyle. They get an okay paying job. They have a $70,000 truck. They have credit card debt. They put their furniture on credit cards. Everything's leveraged out. They have to work hard all week. They complain about their job, and then they, drink it up, party on the weekends, dread Sunday night because they got to do it all again Monday through Friday. Do I want that life? Or do I want to pursue what I call the life of a one percenter, which is essentially just not doing what everybody's status quo does? It's not that hard to get ahead in life, to get to the 1% or 2% in life. You just can't do what the everyday average person who has no financial literacy does. Because if you copy them, you're going to end up where they go. It's like the old saying, if you go with the flow, you're going to go where the flow goes. And so we decided we wanted to achieve or go after, attack becoming a one percenter. And it's after we ran into resources like the book, the famous book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where we realized, okay, you don't have to be stuck in this middle class lifestyle forever. If we can get rid of bad debt, then we can go and leverage good debt to buy appreciating assets. And when we put all of that together, we can build wealth and we get our time back. And is it the easiest road in the world? No. No road's easy. Every road in life is hard. So which hard do you want to choose? And the hard we chose was, it's going to take some discipline. It's going to take some not fun days on the front end. But based on what all these people are saying, based on what this book says, based on what some people that I know who are farther ahead in life who've taken this path are living, it's pretty much worth it. And so we went on a 5-year financial literacy and debt destruction journey. It was a 5-year journey for us. So from 2013 to 2018, all my wife and I did was increase our financial literacy and start knocking out debt, because we couldn't go and build this wealth through assets, through building businesses right away, because we were so hampered down by this consumer debt. I equate it to walking through quicksand. It's like if you're trying to grow wealth while having tons of bad consumer debt, and we'll talk about good debt later. I like good debt. I'm talking about bad consumer debt, high interest debt. If you're trying to build wealth while that's clinging on to you, it's like trying to trudge through quicksand. Like you can't get anywhere. You keep fighting to get up and it just pulls you back down. And so we said, you know what? Let's go knock this out, build this strong foundation, because if you try to build anything on a weak foundation, it may look good for a while, but eventually it's going to crumble. But we said if we can build this strong foundation, then we know that our wealth will last over time. And that strong foundation started with financial literacy and taking care of our bad debt. And it was hard. It was very, very hard for those 5 years, but there's a 4-step process that we followed that I want to share with you guys. And we're going to get into the real estate stuff, and that's what I'm going to talk about the majority of the time. But I will say, if you don't have financial literacy, it's hard to buy real estate. And so the 4 steps that we followed to get our finances in order so that we could go buy those assets look like this. And the first thing we did was we budgeted. And it sounds so simple. but most people don't do it. It's crazy. You have these people who they run companies, they're executives in corporations, and they handle these multi-million, sometimes billion-dollar budgets, but then they come home to their family and they can't budget, or they choose not to budget. And it's like, could you imagine running a business without a budget? Is there any business in the world that's still functioning that runs without a budget? No. Then why do the majority of folks in the world not budget in their own personal life? It makes zero sense. So the first thing we did is we literally sat down and we wrote out how much money we have coming in, where it's coming from, and then how much money we have going out. And what that does is it gives you a financial snapshot of your life so that you know exactly what's coming in and what's going out. And it's very hard because you don't want to look at the numbers. You do not want to face the facts. It is one of those things in life where you cannot get away from the facts at that moment when you're sitting there looking at the budget, and especially looking at prior months. You have to just face it. And that is step one of the process, is facing it. What is my problems? Where do my spending habits? What do they look like? What can we cut back on? Which leads me to point number 2. As soon as you make that budget, the second thing that we did is we reduced our expenses. So you go through it because it's the easiest, it's the quickest. You go through and you cut those expenses down that you do not need. Third, while that's going on, while we've made our budget, we've reduced our expenses, we started paying off the debt, all of the debt that we had. And the method that we used is called the debt snowball. And so we started with our smallest debt. Okay. So it would have been the wedding ring, the $2,500, and we attacked that. We paid the minimum payment on everything else, and we paid off the wedding ring. Then as soon as we paid off the wedding ring, we kept paying the minimum on everything else, but we rolled that money that we were paying on the wedding ring plus any additional from cutting expenses, and we went and we rolled that into our credit cards, which were about 15 grand. Once we paid off the credit cards, then we moved on to the truck, and then we moved on to the student loans until we eventually paid all of our debt off. And it is a very great method for paying off debt because it builds wins over time. People will argue, well, shouldn't you go for the high interest first? Potentially. You may save a few more bucks doing that, but what happens is you never end up paying that debt off, especially if it's a higher debt. And so what this debt snowball method does is allows you to get wins quick. You pay off the smallest debt, you feel good, you got momentum. Now we go pay off the next one, you got momentum, because money is mental, right? Money is mental. And those who can learn that game and win the mentality game to money are going to win in the long run. And then fourth is you're going to increase your income. So the entire journey, those 5 years that we're paying off debt, we're budgeting, we're learning our financial literacy, I was increasing my income. We've pretty much been a one income household since we got married, but I kept sharpening my skills, started making $45,000 driving a box truck, learned how to sell and bumped my income up to $75K. Then we were approaching 100. Then we got to 120. And then we kept growing because I kept sharpening my skill, adding more value to the workplace, which then in turn led me to making more money down the road. And I'll tell you, income is the fuel that propels your rate to wealth. So the more income you have, the faster you're going to grow to wealth if you use it in the right way. And so we got to budget, we got to reduce our expenses, we got to pay off debt. But while we're doing all that, increase our income. Bump that thing up as much as you can, because it's going to allow you to get to where you want to go faster. And so during this entire journey, during this 5-year journey, my best friend had gotten into real estate right when we got out of college. So I go on this journey, I'm having to pay off debt. He starts getting into real estate right away. And so he started out as a broker, right? They were brokering commercial deals, just your standard realtor. And then he became what we call a bird dog. So he started going and finding deals that would make sense for investors. So, they were focusing a lot on distressed single-family homes. They'd find some commercial buildings. They'd find warehouses. And then they would take them to investors, and investors would buy them, and they would broker the deal, and then they would get paid a commission. And so they started doing this. Well, Gaston started to understand the real estate game. He understood how to find undervalued deals, what investors were looking for, how to analyze deals, how to get these deals funded. And so not only did they bring these to other investors, they started keeping these properties for themselves. And by the time my friend became 27 years old, he was worth over $2 million because he had learned the game of real estate, started building assets to his name, and let compound interest do its thing over time. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to break down how I partnered with my friend and learned from my friend to start building my own portfolio of real estate that ultimately led our family to financial freedom.
Are you worried about your financial security in these unprecedented times? If you are, the next minute could profoundly impact your financial security. Imagine waking up to find the economy has plunged and your portfolio has plummeted 30 to 45%, while banks are in turmoil, holding your money hostage while waiting for FDIC intervention. Where would you turn? For many, this may sound like fiction, but it's a stark reality. For those that have money on the line, recently America's awoke to both the NASDAQ and the Dow, plummeting over 1,100 points each and triggering a frenzy of sell offs. History shows us how a single event can crash the market, like the dot-com bubble of 1999, the subprime mortgage crisis of 2008, and the pandemic of 2020. But today, we're facing multiple bubbles: commercial real estate, stock, bonds, and banks. Combined with the relentless inflation, the threat of global recession, the specters of war, and you have the perfect storm. The consequences could be catastrophic, plunging us into unprecedented crisis. America is sliding in the age of discord, with trust in institutions collapsing and the democratic norms unraveling. The quality of life for Americans has declined. Wealth is concentrated among the rich, while the median American family income stagnates, creating a dangerously top-heavy social pyramid. Moreover, hostile countries like Russia, China, and Iran are working to destroy the U.S. dollar. Gold is a no-matter-what store of wealth that you need. That's why Robert has been such an advocate of gold, and he trusts Allegiance Gold. Allegiance Gold is ready to help you incorporate physical gold as part of your portfolio and protect it against economic uncertainty. Visit protectwithrobert.com today to learn how you can qualify for up to $5,000 in free silver with a qualifying investment. Or give them a call at 844-3-ROBERT. Remember to mention Robert and Kim sent you when you contact Allegiance Gold. Secure your IRA or 401k today with Allegiance Gold. Visit protectwithrobert.com or call 844-3-ROBERT.
Welcome back to the Rich Dad Real Estate Show, where we talk about the good news and bad news about real estate. I am your new host of the show, Jaren Sustar. And before the break, we were talking about how my buddy became a multimillionaire at age 27 through investing in real estate. He started as a broker, and then he started keeping the deals himself. And over time, through putting properties in his portfolio, letting compound interest do his thing, he became a multimillionaire at a very young age. And so he's doing all of this while I'm just climbing out of debt. So I'm kind of jealous, but I'm also happy for him because he's one of my best buds. But what was interesting is along my journey of paying off debt, he's telling me all about his real estate story. So we're both newly married. We don't have children at the time. So we're talking multiple times per week and just talking about our jobs, about our lives. And he's telling me about these different deals that he's doing. And so it's almost as though I'm getting a free mentorship on real estate without him actually meaning to mentor me. He's telling me about the type of deals he's looking for, how he analyzes these deals, what kind of numbers he's looking for, how he funds the deals, how he partners with people, who he networks, everything. And I'm getting this real estate 101 training for 5 years from a dude who's kind of figuring out on his own, but it's working because he's completely changed his life before he was even close to being 30 years old. And so I look back and that education was unbelievable for me at the time, which is a huge part of why I had the passion to go do what I do now and preach this good news of real estate to everybody, is because I know how impactful it was for me and how it changed my life of just hearing the stuff over and over and over, because eventually it came time for me to go and buy my property. So we finally get out of debt after 5 years of, financial literacy, going through the debt snowball. We're finally there. We've worked so hard. And so now is the next part of the journey. So when we set out, we knew we wanted to pay off debt to go buy assets. But then when it comes down to actually doing it, it's really, really scary. It's very scary. So I remember my buddy taking me under his arms and he said, listen, you've done a great job. You built your financial literacy. You've got out of the bad debt. It's time to start buying real estate. He said, it's going to change your life. Look what it's done to me. Look what it's done to others. Look what essentially it's been doing for people since the beginning of time. It's not speculative. It's been making people wealthy since the beginning of time. And so he essentially forces me to go and buy my first rental property. It was a single family home, address 407 Crosby Circle, Greenville, South Carolina. He helped me find the property. He helped me analyze the property. He helped me get an attorney for the property. He helped me find funding for the property, and he introduced me to a property manager for the property. And so I had him hold my hand through this entire process. But guess what? I was still scared out of my mind. I can remember those feelings to this day. Is the tenant going to pay? Is the house going to burn down? Am I going to be able to make my payments on the mortgage? All of these fears that everybody has was running through my mind. And I remember I wanted to pull out of the deal. I tried pulling out of the deal. And I remember him looking at me. He said, I'm not going to allow you to do this. We've made it this far. You're not pulling out of this deal. You know what needs to be done. He said, and we've got to get you to the point to where you believe that not investing in real estate is riskier for your future than investing in real estate. And that is one of the most powerful lines I have ever heard to this day. It inspires me and keeps me going. It is riskier for your future to not invest in real estate than it is to invest in real estate based on historical data. And so I go through with the property. I think I paid $68,000 for it. I had to put around $13,000 down, $15,000 worth of rehab. And here I am. I've just spent, whatever, 28, 30,000 of my own bucks, and I own a rental property. And let me tell you what, I walked around with my chest bowed out. I thought I was something. Here I am, this small town dude from the middle of nowhere, doesn't come from anything, and now I'm a real estate investor, baby. I thought I was the coolest guy in the entire world. And so I said, you know what? I got to go do this again, because I'll tell you, and any of you who are listening to this who already own real estate, you know what I'm talking about. As soon as you do that first one, it's like riding a roller coaster. You're kind of nervous, you're scared, it's anticipatory, and then you do it, and next thing you know, you're back in line to hop back on that roller coaster. And that's how I felt. I said, I got to go get another one. And so a couple months later, this is in 2018, I go find another property. I think it was 506 Auburn Avenue. I was on my own on this one. My buddy said, you're on your own. I love you. I helped you with that first one, but I don't have time to be doing all this for you. So I went out and found this property on my own in my hometown, 506 Auburn Avenue, bought it for around $70K, $25,000 worth of rehab. And so now I have two properties. And so I really think I'm something. But the problem was I ran out of money. So I bought them in a traditional way. So when I say a traditional way, 20% down for the down payment, and then I rehabbed it with my own money, which is fine, but most of us have a finite amount of money. And so I ran out of money. I didn't have any more capital to go do that with because I had just spent it on these two properties. And while it's definitely still a fantastic investment, two rentals aren't going to change your life, especially in the short term. They're not going to make you wealthy. They're not going to set you financially free. And so I was like, man, I have to figure something out. I cannot scale with this current model. And so I remember sitting one day, now there's a term coined for this, but at the time there wasn't. I remember sitting one day and I was like, okay, let me think through this. If I can go find undervalued property, so like think of an ugly property, but in decent areas, get them at a good deal, I could use somebody else's capital. So somebody who could give me capital. I could go buy it with their money, rehab it with their money, and then I could either refinance with the bank after I've finished rehabbing and got a tenant in place, and I could pay that initial lender their money back, and then we could go do it again. Or if I didn't want to keep it as a rental, I wouldn't refinance at the end. I would just go sell it as a flip and make money, and after I sold it, then I would pay the lender on the front end back. And I was like, holy crap. Well, come to find out today, if you do that as a rental, it's known as the BRRRR method. And then a lot of people do it as fix and flips. It wasn't some, novel idea. I mean, I guess it was, but it wasn't, I didn't discover it. People have been doing this for a long time, but I don't know if I read it somewhere, if I heard it somewhere. I just remember it hitting me one day. I was like, I need to go do this. And so that's what I did. I started deploying other people's money to buy real estate in 2019. So 2018, we bought two, feeling real good about ourselves, run out of capital. Have to pivot, say if I'm going to scale, I've got to learn to partner with other people who have capital. And we bought 19 additional units in 2019. So 2 in 2018, 19 in 2019. By the end of 2019, we have 21 properties under our belt. And I think we had done a couple flips in there too. The 21 is just for the rentals that we had kept in our actual portfolio. And I was like, holy crap, this works. Now, mind you, nobody gave me a dime. This isn't from inheritance. I don't have any special powers. This is from having an enlightenment of, oh, wow, if I do this, I can scale. I don't have to have all this capital. And then taking the action to go do it. Because most people will think it's a good idea. They know, well, that makes sense. But for whatever reason, oh, that's too hard. Oh, I don't have time. Oh, I'm too busy. Oh, what if this happens? And they sit on the sidelines. And the crazy thing is, 5 years from now, they're at the same place they were today. They'll be at the same place 5 years from now as they are today because they'll continue making excuses. I heard a quote the other day from Jesse Itzler. It said, you can't get lucky if you're not in the game. So much of success in life, of building wealth in life, is being at the right place at the right time, but you can't be at the right place at the right time if you don't show up every day. And so I encourage you, show up, get in the game, start doing deals. It doesn't have to be grand slams. It doesn't have to be home runs. It doesn't have to be 19 units in a year. Just go buy one. Make it a good deal, get it stabilized, go buy another. And then what happens is, because you're in the game, you start meeting people, you start getting connections, and opportunities open up, partnerships open up. And when you were just doing one single family home at a time, now you're doing commercial buildings or Airbnbs, or you're still doing single family and you're buying packages, or you're flipping, or you're doing new development, or whatever the case may be. Okay. And so we really focused in on that strategy for us. And we stayed on the single family homes to start. We did a lot of BRRR, which is essentially buy undervalued, rehab, refinance, and we repeated that process over and over and over again. And that's how we build our portfolio, because rentals build wealth. Okay. Rentals don't make you rich or bring in a ton of money right immediately, but they build wealth over time. And so we started stacking those up, while also doing the same method. So finding the distressed properties, fixing them up, but instead of refining them and keeping them in our portfolio, we would then go and list and sell a few of the properties too. So if we needed capital, if we needed cash, if we wanted instant income, when I say instant, we're talking on average 3 to 6 months, then we would go flip and bring in income. It's great if you need to, income for whatever reason. You're doing something at your house, you need additional money, you got a project going on, you're just trying to supplement income. There could be a million reasons why you would need cash now instead of building wealth over time. And so when you need that, flips are there. Just know, and any investor who's been doing this a long time will tell you, everybody's biggest regret for the most part in real estate investing is every property they've ever sold. And so if you're a big flipper, you're going to look back 10 years from now and be like, man, if I would have kept those 10 properties that I flipped, look what they'd be worth today as rentals. And so there's a time and a place for both, but just throw that little nugget out there. So what did we look for? What was our bread and butter? Well, single family homes in B to C class neighborhoods. Okay. So when I look at different classes of neighborhoods, you got A, B, C, and D. A being the nicest part of town, D being the worst part of town. I don't spend a lot of time in A class areas because you can't make deals happen there the majority of the time. And I don't spend any time in the D class areas. I'm looking right there in the middle, the good parts of town, to where you can still get appreciation, but properties could potentially cash flow as well as rentals. Once I've nailed down those areas, then I'm looking for a distressed home and a distressed seller. So I'm looking for a tired landlord, somebody who's had a property for a long time. They're tired of dealing with it, tired of being a landlord. Looking for an estate sale. A spouse just passed away, or both parents just passed away, and the other spouse or the children need to get rid of the property. We're able to help them and take that off of their hands. Foreclosures, recently divorced, probate. There's tons of different distressed sellers, and we'll talk about this in the coming weeks and the coming months. But we're looking for folks who need to sell. They need to sell fast, and we help them be able to do that. Once we've nailed down our area and we've found a property in that area that meets that criteria of a distressed home or distressed seller. And when I say distressed home, I'm talking about overgrown yard, old windows, ugly painted house, interior carpet from the 1970s, wood paneling on the wall, ugly bathrooms. You guys have ever seen those little square tiles in bathrooms that are like stained pink or lime green? That's what I mean by distressed home. So distressed seller with the distressed home is going to be the massive combo. And you're not going to get both of those every time, but usually we're going to need at least the distressed property part of the equation to be able to get it at a good enough deal. And when I look at my formula to say, okay, how do I know what to purchase these properties at? I go find the ARV, which is the after repair value of the home. What is this home that I'm looking at? It's all distressed right now, but what's it going to be worth after I fix it up? And the way we do that is you can hop on an app like Zillow, Realtor.com, and get on the MLS. And we're not going to look at any Zestimates, but we're going to go and we're going to look at homes that have sold recently in that area that are comparable homes. And we're going to see what they sold for a price per square foot. Then we're going to take that price per square foot that these homes are selling for, multiply it by the square footage of the home we're looking at, and that's going to tell us what our after repair value will be, or what this property that we're looking at is going to be worth after we fix it up. So then we're going to take that after repair value, multiply it by 70%. It's called the 70% rule. It's going to give us a good discount on the property. We're then going to subtract our estimated rehab costs, and that tells us what our purchase price should be. So again, ARV times 70%. Once we have that number, subtract our estimated rehab, and that tells us what our purchase price should be. Now, that's not gospel. It doesn't have to be exact every time, but it will give you a good idea what you should be buying properties for them to make sense, for you to make a profit on the flip side, or for you to get them at a low enough cost on the rental side for them to make sense and break even or cash flow a couple $100 per month. And when we're looking at the rental side of things, there's a little more that's involved to it with this equation, because we do have to go and say, okay, what are market rents going for? And if we refi this property based on its ARV at a 70, 80% LTV, are the rents in that area going to be able to cover that new loan? And we can play with those numbers to see if it's going to make sense as a rental property. So then once we've got these numbers figured out, we've analyzed everything, now we got to fund it. And I told you guys we used a lot of other people's money. What does that look like? And I'm not going to be able to dive into all these today, but if you keep showing up week after week, I promise you I will dig into all these, teach you how to find them, teach you how we structure all this stuff. But just to give you an idea of how we use other people's money, or not always just other people's money, maybe some capital that we can get a hold of in our own name to fund deals, is we'll use private money. And so when I say private money, I'm thinking somebody in our network. So friends, family, coworker, you name it. Somebody that you know in your network, and you may not know anybody in your immediate network who would be a good private lender, but how can you chase down your current networks? Like expand that tree out. Okay, so you got family, friends, coworkers. Well, none of them that you know are going to be able to lend to you. They're not going to lend you money to do real estate deals, but who do they know? Who do mom and dad know? Your aunts and uncles know? Who do your friends know? Who do their parents know? Who do their aunts and uncles know? Who do your coworkers know? And you start chasing down those different networks, setting up time to meet with folks that have done well for themselves. They've already dabbled in real estate. They've already lent in real estate. And all you need is one private lender in your corner to change your life forever. We'll use hard money, which is just a fancy word for somebody who does private lending, but officially. So they're like companies that do private lending. Oftentimes they will require a 10 or 20% down payment, sometimes less, depending on your experience level. And that's on the purchase price. And then they will loan you 100% of the rehab cost. So it is a very fantastic tool for getting into real estate and getting capital to get that rehab done and get properties purchased. You can use a HELOC. You can use cash. You can use any other line of credit. You can use 401k, or you can use a combo of any of these. Okay, that's the beautiful thing about buying rental properties and doing real estate investment transactions. We don't have the constraints on us like we do with personal homes, with the way lending is very regulated. It's not quite that way in the investment world when we're looking at commercial loans, bridge loans, hard money loans. So we can combine private and hard money. We can combine our HELOC and hard money, cash, HELOC, you name it. You can put all those together, however we have to do it, to get the deal done. Okay, and then that money is going to be used as a bridge loan. So we're going to use it for a very short term to get into the deal and then to rehab the deal. And usually that money's left out for 365 days at a, call it 10 to 14% interest rate, depending on what the rates are at the time. You pay interest only every month. And then once you refinance or sell out, you pay them back and you're done with the loan. So the goal is to use those for a bridge loan. They're going to be out for a short time just to get into the deal and just to be able to rehab the deal. Then if we're going to keep the property as a rental, we're going to refinance it after we've bought the property and we've rehabbed it and it's in better condition and the ARV is now up here compared to down here when you purchased it. We're going to refinance into a long-term stable loan with the bank, and that refinance is going to allow us to pay that original bridge loan back. Or if we're selling this property as a fix and flip, we can sell it, pay the lender back, make our profit, and move on. So that is how we got started. That has been our bread and butter. Still to this day, I do. I'm in the middle of a BRRR right now. We love single family home BRRRRs and flips. Fantastic way to get into real estate. It's easy to get loans for them. It's easy to find these properties. It's easy to analyze these properties. And what's everybody's dream in life? What's the American dream? To own your own home. And so your seller pool, when you go to exit these properties, is huge. If you buy a commercial building, you're going to have to sell it to another investor. That's a limited number of folks. But you have a single family home you want to exit, you can sell to the entire general population. Everybody wants to buy a home. And so that's been our bread and butter. But since we have expanded to Airbnbs, new development, I'm in the middle of building 2 duplexes right now. Mobile home parks, I've bought mobile home parks. I bought multifamily homes, commercial buildings, etc. You name it, we've probably done it. And you name a way to get funding for it, we've probably done it. Okay. And so I'm going to break all of this stuff down over the coming weeks, months, and years. So make sure you're tuning in every week so I can deep dive into things like lending and analyzing properties and new development and multifamily versus single family, everything that goes into real estate. My goal is to educate you and give you deep dives so that you can listen to these episodes and then go apply them in the real world and change your life through the greatest asset in the world, real estate. Now, I want you guys to remember the goal for all of us, the goal is financial freedom and getting our time back. That sits here. I want you to understand that real estate is simply a tool that gets you there. Real estate is simply a tool that is going to get us to the promised land. And so we have to remember that why. However you word it, whatever your why is, I would encourage you, write it down, stick it in your office, on your mirror, in your car, all these different places, because it's not easy. This promised land is not easy to get to. If it were, then everybody would be there. But they're not. Why? Because the road's a lot harder. It takes a lot more problem solving. You're going to go through a lot more headaches. But if you know the reason why, when the dog days come, you'll be able to push through. And I can tell you, being on both sides, it is worth the grind. It is worth the hustle. It is worth all the headaches that are involved. Because when you wake up one day after building this amazing portfolio, after doing these great deals, and you can decide what that day looks like, it all becomes worth it. It all becomes worth it. And you know, the last thing I'll leave you with is, you know, the beautiful thing is about real estate is it's been making people wealthy since the beginning of time. So we're not sitting here talking about a speculative asset. If you go back literally to the beginning of time, people who bought land, conquered land, sat on land, said it was there, owned houses, owned buildings, they were the wealthy ones in their towns. And nothing has changed today. It is not speculative. It's been making people wealthy for centuries. It'll continue making people wealthy. And if you will dig in and allow leverage, appreciation, cash flow, tenants paying down your debt, and tax benefits, the greatest concoction known to man that comes with owning real estate, affect your life, you too will be able to achieve your goal of financial and time freedom. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Rich Dad Real Estate Show. Again, I'm your new host, Jaren Sustar. I look forward to hanging out with you guys every week. Make sure you keep tuning in so we can deep dive into all things real estate investing. You can take this knowledge, go apply it into the world so you can ultimately reach financial freedom. I'll see you next week.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.